This is an introduction lecture of innovation under the name Idea Factory, a course for the University of Applied Sciences in Amsterdam for the minor Knowledge Sharing and Web 3.0. And my name is Boyd Hendricks. Okay, now let's look at the full innovation process. What is happening in organizations that are innovating? What are they doing? Basically, they have in generally a 5-step process. Step number 1, they generate ideas. It's a process type of idea generation. Step 2, then they are looking at the business feasibility of that idea. Then in step number 3, they develop that idea into something that they can actually sell. In step number 4, they scale that up and they validate if it is working on a larger scale. And then finally, number 5, it's a running business. Now that sounds very simple, but these steps are very important that they come back in any sort of innovation program, whatever organization. And sometimes it is not so recognizable, sometimes they put things together, but one of the most important things is that idea generation is something that you plan, that you can aim for. Organizations that organize that in advance, they seem to have much more new ideas than organizations who just say, well, we have an idea box, just come up. If you start playing that and if you apply social media in your idea generation, so that once you have a new idea, it is not something that you have some feedback on there, but you introduced into an environment where straight away your idea, it's visible, you brought it in, there is a direct communication, you see who's involved, who is looking at it, you see the responses you get, and also you can imagine that there is a number of ideas, and that number that can be very, very big. It can be like 100 new ideas a week if you work in a large company and you have a good catch system. Then all sort of people will come with brilliant ideas from all sort of corners. That means that you must have a process of selecting them, recognizing those who bring the idea in, and then very important, have a decision process in place where you do an initial screening so that you're going to bring that from the generated idea into the next step. You're going to make it an effort. You're going to calculate how feasible the idea is if you really take it to the next step. Now, generating ideas, if you take that a bit serious, you generate so many ideas with your company, you don't believe it. So there must be that encouragement, please generate more ideas, they are important. At the other hand, you have to be very strict what you let into the business feasibility stage. Business feasibility means you have to really work that idea, kick it about. Plan it, have a brainstorm, discuss it, investigate. That costs time and money. So if you have 1,000 ideas and 1,000 times you must be a feasibility study, there's a good chance it is not done correctly. But especially, you can't afford that much time. It's impossible, not even when you are a multinational. You grab your best ideas. So where does the moment come from? Who's involved in the initial screening? Who's actually bothered with the fact that that idea has to go to the feasibility study? Well, the moment there is a commission, normally specialized in certain areas, in certain process steps. It can be, of course, an innovation in marketing, an innovation in communication, product development, in the process itself of production. Maybe it's a new product, maybe it's a new country, maybe it's a new concept. All these different aspects will have different specialist groups that will look at ideas which are very close to the experience to know if it is a real new idea or if it is something they have to let go. So the moment you have this new idea, you look at it, the committee agrees, yes, we do a business feasibility, then still only the people from the committee have been busy with that, researching it, making a business case, studying it, kicking it about. But on that moment, you have to make a decision to develop it further, to bring it into development. Now, to develop an idea into a prototype that really works, now that is expensive. You don't want that to happen with ideas that don't stand a chance. So you really would enjoy that you make that decision based on very, very strong signals that this is a winning idea and that when it is brought into development, it will prove itself further in a prototype or in a pilot or in a test phase or in what have you. The important thing is then, because there are not many business feasibility studies done, the business feasibility study will give you real marks, real figures to work with. And it can actually rate and prioritize ideas and the best ones you want to implement first. Now, already I said earlier that the business feasibility is done by specialized teams on a location where expertise is present. The development of an idea into a prototype or into a pilot or something like that, into a restricted testing, that is also done on a location out of view of anybody, and it becomes more secretive. Because when it is feasible and then the pilots start to be a success, it also becomes very sensitive for competition. It becomes confidential on the highest order. Now you can imagine that you develop so many new ideas, products, services, what have you, a year, and maybe one or two are good enough to really come to a scale up so that you produce it to an extent that you can test the use, that you can test the market, that you can test the appreciation of users, etc. So it must mean that there will be a launch of your smaller scale test production or pilot, and on that moment that you see it is really working, only then you start to develop a plan for a running business so that it is brought in the bigger scheme of things. That's very important. This process you should know by heart. These are the steps which are more or less the same worldwide in all sort of innovative environments. Idea generation, fine, but the moment an idea is good, it's only the first step. Now you can imagine that there are two things important. Normally, the person who had the idea, or the person responsible for the feasibility, or the person responsible for developing it, hardly ever they're all the way involved till the end. Somewhere new teams have to take the ideas from somebody else and develop it further. So first of all, knowledge management have an important say in that. If you do understand when an idea comes to a decision moment, who are the people that brought the idea in the first place, who developed it further, and where is it now? What are all the documents? And what is very important, what do these documents say? Do they reflect a discussion? Do they reflect a context? Do they show what context, what information was available, in what light certain decisions or certain scenarios were chosen? That's important. So there must be a database around an idea when it goes into a business feasibility. And that goes for every step. That data set, that intellectual context around the development of that idea becomes richer, so you always know where it stood. And this sounds logical, but in a lot of organizations, the moment ideas hit the pilot stage and it is further developed, the intellectual owners are far away, marketing people are bending over it, commitments to economic performance of a certain product or process suddenly becomes so important that it becomes more difficult to stand back and look at the whole picture where the idea came from, and or it is still in line with the original intentions. So that setup is important. It's also important the moment you use social media in there, and we will talk about that later more on length, is that you actually can introduce other organizations, other companies, external specialists, external institutes, other competitors maybe, in the innovation process, because it is so much more easy to be open in your innovation process, but in a restrictive way. So with your social media, you can actually play around by engaging and de-engaging certain players in certain steps of that innovation process. As long As you with your organization have the total overview, and you know where you are and where the knowledge bases were during the development, so that is sorted. You can be much more open and relaxed about the innovation, which means that you have much richer sources to tap from in that innovation process. Most organizations use what is called the 6P concept around innovation. How do you get that right, that idea factory? How do you get new ideas? Well, they must put their things in place. So they say, well, we do 6 things. That's our planning, pipeline, process, platform, people, and performance. Let's look at them one by one. And I expect for your exam that these are points you know by heart and you can just deliberate on them. Now, why would you want to run an idea factory? Why do you want to have the process completely crystallized in a way that you can rely on the innovative capabilities of your organization? And what is the role of social media in that? We will talk about that a bit. Well, first of all, that's very important to maintain competitiveness. Innovation is everything. New ideas is everything. And that's for society, for politics, for commerce, for services, for everything. It's completely in a flow of change for the better. That's innovation, and it's important that you actually do live up to that. There are increased expectations. There is more and more, and also thanks to social media, this global aspect. It's a global market. These are very important reasons why, and why it is not working. I can give you some ideas why. Often, if new ideas are not received in a formal way, if there's no process of reception, you often see that there is a boss who doesn't want it, who's scared, old-fashioned, plays it safe, doesn't understand new media, or does not feel new markets are a part of the reality of that organization, or whatever. There are many scared cows around. There are no-go areas, there are hobbies, there are experience from the past. There's a lot of hustle. There's also this feel that nobody cares. There is no recognition, there are no rewards, there's no need. Also, if you're just free, they say, oh yeah, any idea is welcome. There's no guidance, no boundaries. That's sort of the wrong sort of freedom that you often see. Also, if there is no structure in the method of innovation, it becomes that everybody is having any form of action. There are no priorities. Sometimes you see that good ideas are run down in poor facilities, poor equipment. Sometimes a new idea is so needed that they start to rush for time, or they simply do not have the ability to implement a new idea to bring out the best. Now, innovation is an ability to explore ideas. You innovate, you explore ideas. So you have creative thoughts and you have an ability to implement. Often, creative thoughts can be made into a separate service. There are companies who are completely specialized in having creative thoughts, and there are other companies who are really specialized on the ability to implement. Now, if you go back to the traditional process of innovation that I showed you earlier, actually there are companies specialized in each step and even in each decision of that process, and therefore as a company or as a governmental organization, you can buy your way into new ideas, but then still you must have the vision that you need them and how you want to hand them in. Now let's look at the planning. It's important to realize there are two main focus points. It's the products and services which you can plan the innovation in, and market and customers. You can look at current, and concerning the products and services, current, modified or new, and with market and customers, current, extended and new. And you see in the color scheme that it looks as follows. With the processes and products, you can actually say, well, we are looking for the current situation at improvement. If we start to modify them, we talk about development, for example, product development. And if things are new, then they are new capabilities, which we need because we're looking at a new product or a new service, and capabilities must be introduced, which is more difficult. If you look at market and customers, it's the same. A new market you must develop, and if you go further, there are new capabilities. If it is a combination, it becomes very complex, and then we're looking at new business development or strategic change. So in the color codes, as if we sat there in the planning, you see that if you are just at the current situation, or you just extend it or modify it from there, you can use existing resources and skills. If you then extend that into the orange field, you actually have to deal with key issues around building these new capabilities. That is also a form of a crisis which you have to address. But if you then come in the red area, that really means you work with new business development and strategic changes. That means your resources must come in, new capabilities, new ideas, new leadership, and it is much more challenging. So you start planning, and you have to understand how does these planning processes work. Is it just a modification? Is it just improvement? Or are we only extending? Or are we really looking at new capabilities? That means I have to have much more management in. And if it's going for a real dramatic strategic changes, I need new resources. That's concerning the planning, very important. Now, the second one is the pipeline. The pipeline means where do the new ideas come from? Well, that can be internal or external. Let's first look at internal, the internal pipeline. There are 3 levels. First, there is in any organization an annual business planning process. Every organization has it. It's easy to get connected once you know it's there. So it is something you have to ask there. If you go to the secretary desk at the board, and you ask, can I have the business planning, and you are entitled to, then they will give it to you, and you can read there how the plans are scheduled throughout the year, and that will show you when certain new developments are initiated, how rounds are planned, etc. That pipeline comes partly from that planning process. There are also organizations that used focused innovation workshops. They often come from that planning process and are often themed or structured. What you also see is that not all departments have it. But the departments where it is important, they do have sort of a discipline around planning workshop where innovation takes place. Well, then finally, on a third level, the pipeline is filled with ad hoc and day-to-day activities. There is a discipline to do something with new ideas, to bring them out, to document them, to communicate them. It's just for you to find out when, where, and how. It is possible that in these 3 levels, in certain organizations, this first one is where they all go for. There are other organizations which are very laid back and free, and they are much more on that third level, where they just give it the responsibility to the individuals or to the teams. Now, let's look at external. If you depend on an external pipeline, you do scanning. You do a systematic approach to analyze and evaluate the external and competitive environments to see where others have ideas, and you copy them, or you're inspired by them, or where you see opportunities that you can actually use as an inspiration for your own pipeline. I'll give you an example. You can then look at quarterly reports and trends on political change, on economic movements, on technology advances, on environmental trends, things like that. So, for example, there's a big conference or there is a trade show on the latest technologies, and for that you go to Germany to that trade show, and when the delegation comes back, you sit together and you see which of the observed innovations or meetings you had can be brought into a new idea or services. If you do it like that, then you utilize that external pipeline to the fullest. Some organizations even have a special department that does scanning. And the second half of this course, where we look at competitive and market intelligence on length, we will discuss how that scanning actually takes place. And we will even look in when scanning is copying and stealing and becomes illegal, or when it is pure free competition, looking at your competitors and seeing what you can learn and to what extent you can copy what they do. But looking at the external world, it's an effort, and if you do it not just from, oh well, let's see, but you scan it organized so that you don't miss things, it is a very rich source for your innovation process. Now, let's very quickly look at something important, and we will come back to that because this will be major. In the past, every organization's innovation was really something from behind closed doors. Even our own Philips, with a massive net lab innovation plant in Eindhoven, it was not something where it was easy to access. If you look now, it's completely different. It's a campus where many organizations have their house, and of course Philips is big there, but it is open. It is as if to be restrictive and secretive about innovation works against you. You have research projects, it starts to develop from research into development, and finally you come onto the market and people are surprised, whoa, what is this? They just got that out of their head. Yeah? And now you see much more, that innovation is open. You search for partners who can add value to your research and development and innovative process. And in that openness, the speed and innovation increases and the costs of the innovation process decreases. You can play around. You can therefore much quicker go into new markets because you partner your market process or your market approach in an innovative way with partners which have certain market presence already there. Or and this is also maybe first that where social media is a very important component. Because of the social media possibilities, you can actually open your innovation process towards key players in such an open and unrestrictive way based on social media that the costs of these cooperations are rather limited and are very easy to bridge. Now, having said that, this is not as easy as I explain it now, because there is no organization that does open innovation as such. What they mean actually is that certain very well defined steps within that innovation process. For that they seek partners. These partners are not just anyone, but they select these partners with great detail and effort. And then these partners, with them, they create an open environment for just that step based on social media, where for a lot of interaction takes place without exchanging human resources or a lot of documents. It's based on the serious separation of research processes and the usage of intellectual capital. And in the next step, it might be so that certain conclusions are bought or sold or separated or integrated in a way that a next step with new partners takes place. So yes, the innovation is so-called open because it is not restricted to one company anymore, but open and free are two different words. That's important to realize. So how to do that open innovation, if we go a bit further to the external one. You identify your areas, you identify the partners, and then very important, you then analyze all the risks. You take care that you protect your intellectual capital, so you do that prior any sort of interaction. Then you define the contribution of each participant, and beforehand you agree on the share in revenues and rewards. So that, on that moment, that bit is open. The next one is the process. And the process is sort of the filter process from the many ideas to the few implemented projects or maybe products as a result. So how does that look? How will that happen? We talked about it before. I showed you a process. You have many new ideas. There is, so to speak, an idea portfolio so that you're sure that it's not just all ideas about export and no ideas about production process or what have you. No, there is a portfolio and you want to have new ideas on all different areas. There is also a process of discarding ideas. Which ideas, not what we do with them. Are they secretive? Are they in the open? Can we sell discarded ideas? You name it. And then that filter, we talk about the value, the suitability, the acceptable. Is it feasible? Is it enduring? And then finally, throughout these layers, we come then we can start implementing in the project. Now let's look at the process. For example, here, this is just another case where you say we have an initiation, there is a go or no go, then we do a business case. And if the business case doesn't work out, it's a no go, it's a go, or we modify. We say, well, let's look at it again. Maybe the approach must be different. If that is a go, we start to develop, it's a no go, or we modify it again. The modification becomes a very important thing because you gave it a go after the initiation, and that means you said somewhere it has value and we cannot just throw it away for nothing. So you always will say, is it a no-go or is it a modification? If it is a no-go, you don't discard it, but then it must be in the knowledge base because people will come with that new idea over and over again, and it might be so that circumstances like technology, like society, like politics, like environment, like law changes, wherefore old decisions become obsolete and you can do them again, and then suddenly it seems feasible. So it's important that you document the no-go decisions really well, that you understand, no, that moment of time, under these circumstances, in that context, it's a no, and other ways we can go on. Now, the fourth one is the platform. The platform becomes more and more important because of the cloud, because of social media. People appreciate that the platform on what you work gives you much more leverage and freedom to play around, to be what is called an intrapreneur. You are an entrepreneur, a free enterprise in itself. As a team or as an individual, you come with ideas, you want to achieve things, you want to change things, you have ambitions and vision, you want to reach out. And because of platform, because of social media and the possibilities, you have much more freedom to entrepreneur your way into and inside that organization than you ever had before. In the past, your position in the hierarchy was very important and it was very difficult just to do things or to start up things. And you see that in the old economy, that organizations who have not adapted to that freedom are suffering in the speed in which they are able to adapt to new situation. So innovation, the power of innovation and the speed of change has very much to deal with the adaptation of social media and the way knowledge is shared and managed. That is a very, very important lesson. Now, of course, it is complex. It also has to deal how you work with people. How do you manage them? And we talked on length on the knowledge map. So the knowledge map is there. That is this moment. People are managed by their availability of their core competences, their experiences, their skill sets, their education, etc. But that's in the knowledge map. Then there's another one, and I just quickly sketched that here, is that if you really understand what makes them tick, and neuro-linguistic programming helps you to a certain extent in that if people are strong in a visual way or are very strong in an auditory or in a kinesthetic way, and I will explain that in a lecture rather than here online, in working in a team and coming to creative ideas, people who think in pictures rather than in words or rather than in feelings do have different ways to be creative and to come with ideas. Now, I work with an American firm who really inspired me, and they said, what we do, we recognize the fact that people who are visual or auditory or kinesthetic are different in their way they process new thoughts. And if we want them to innovate, we group and cluster them together on these specific merits. So we know the visual people, we put them together, and from these teams we see much more than from mixed teams. We put auditory people together, and from that team we see much more results on a creative level than from mixed teams, and that's the same with the kinesthetic teams. Now I will explain in class a little bit more in detail, but I want you to understand that it works like that, and what it means if you manage people and create teams and expect them to come with results. That if people tend to build new ideas different, that even when they are on or offline or working individually, the moment you bring them together in a team and they do have that similarity, then that is the way to very successful interactions. Then finally, the last P, and maybe the most important ones, is the performance. Performance, speed and scope. It's something that you measure. Do we do it? Is it right? Are we on track? And often with innovation, they only look at a few successes and they say, yeah, but maybe they were lucky with the market, lucky with the timing, lucky with the economy. You have to have a lot of measurements in place to be certain that your innovation is up to scratch, and that it is really performing well. Now, how do you do that? You can, for example, say, let me see if there is an impact on the bottom line performance, like, for example, the financial or strategic goals. Let's agree on forehand what the impact will be of the innovations, of the new ideas on the financial or strategic goals. Then you know where you stand. Did you make it? Did you not make it? And over the years, you start to appreciate how innovative you must be to remain on top of the class, to remain in the lead among your competitors. Yeah? You must understand how many ideas, when, how different, how frequent, that number, that mix of ideas, it's the next thing you want to measure. It must be fit with the strategy. If your strategy is to open internationally and your innovations are very much based on one locality, you got something wrong. It must fit with the strategy. It's also important to understand the extent of the innovation. Is it ambitious enough? Is it stretching enough? Are they only improvements? And now you can go back to the planning overview. Is it only improving? Is it adjusting? Or is it really new? Are we really sort of biting the bullet? Are we doing something extraordinary? Or are we playing safe? Now, the effectiveness and efficiency of the process is important. How many people and resources are we actually involving in the innovation? Maybe we're overdoing it and everybody's all the time thinking new things and nobody is taking responsibility for the day-to-day sustainability. Yeah? Is there a culture of learning? Yeah? Is there a progress in the idea, or are we still having new ideas and that's it? Or is there this new atmosphere that breeds excellence? And how do we do that? And what is the overall success rate? Is it 10-20%? Is it between 60 and 80%, which I hope it is? Yeah? That is measuring the performance, and that is important. Now there are a few things left. First of all, what you see is in a traditional way, an organization is developing itself and its processes are in a certain direction. And also what they develop then, it's looking that way. It is within reach of what they already have, the way they already work. The traditional innovation is parallel to the existing skill sets. And new innovation crosses that out and says, you know what, let's think out of the box, let's do new things, because we can actually reach out to other organizations with certain capabilities and connect very rapidly, thanks to social media, with complete new ways of thinking, with new markets, with new communication abilities to reach customers we never had before, service in areas where we have never thought of before, because we feel that we don't have to be afraid anymore. we can actually talk about a trusted environment because trust is created much more rapidly than before. Now, to change that direction, to do new innovation, that you cross these borders, that's really new and not easy at all. Let's look at the innovation chain. For that, we have to realize that the innovation chain is built up in compartments of idea, research and development, development of the idea into the next thing, the production and the distribution. It is as follows. The moment ideas are generated, there is an evaluation, there is a pro forma business plan, etc. Often only when that is finished, R&D comes in the picture and they start to research not only the technical aspects but also the market aspect. They have to define what is possible, and on that moment you will see that the ideas are already there. The creative moment is before that. So there are a lot of organizations depending on R&D and say that's where they innovate. But the serious new ideas are coming from other sources and then are brought into an R&D environment to make sure that the preparation before the development stage is done well. The moment you start to develop, you need new ideas again. And you will see that you play around with pilot runs, with prototypes, with interaction with first users, etc. And on that moment only, there is a production and your sales and your profits are coming up. The moment you start to distributing, there's a market development, and then finally you have your maturity, your decline and your phase out. I find it important that you have a view how that works. What are the ingredients, what will happen with ideas, when are they actually used, what is the role of R&D in that total, and when do you actually see sales or profits coming up. It's also important that you have a sense on information and physical flows within the supply chain. Because the supply chain just not means that you have to buy goodies, you do something with it and then you sell, let's say, the next step. Your customers often are part of a supply chain as well. They do something that you have and they use that into the next thing. You have to understand the full supply chain, because on that moment you realize that maybe your possibilities are restricted by a lack of innovative powers at your first tier supplier. Maybe you must have a better understanding of what your second tier supplier actually is delivering and how you fit in that chain. And maybe you have to spread information to them to say, this is the way I use your product, this is sort of the possibilities I'm looking for, so that they can start to be innovative with what you actually have in demand. That communication can be speeded up and intensified with the help of social media as well. At the moment, you see that, of course, there is always the possibility that you change suppliers, or that you put suppliers under the pressure of competition, so that there is this choice you have and you force them into competitiveness and innovativeness. But nowadays, more often, you reach out to your supplier and you become partners in innovative thought, so that actually your production process starts earlier with the help of your supplier, and that you actually can play around with the possibilities there. And you often see that these are sources of innovation. That is the same if you want to really understand the needs and the application of your thinking process and of your products, what is actually happening on your customer side. Of course, when they're end consumers, you have to know that, but often you do not deliver at an end consumer, but at a first tier or second tier customer before the end user is visible. And so you have to learn from them what are their schedules, how can you change, improve, innovate your part of the deal for them to accelerate their new ideas. Now that makes it really, really interesting. That sense where innovation fits in the supply chain, what the role of information is in there, and how that actually then contradicts the physical flow of stuff. I want you to have a good understanding there. Now, the next thing, it's very interesting, and we will come back to that definitely in a later stage, but this is for you to pick up and understand. There is an important product life cycle, and almost all products or services listen to that. There is a timeline and there is a revenue growth. And if we follow that timeline, there is something very interesting happening. You have, so to speak, the early market. And the early market is for those who do disruptive innovation. They come with something completely new, like app-driven mobile phones, I don't know. Something new, something, well, this is not what we want anymore. If this new glasses from Google or if the watch from Apple is coming up soon, Samsung are busy with it, that's really new, and then people just leave the one thing behind for the other thing because it replaces more and it's really something. What will happen is that there is an early market where people really like the idea that they got something new. They are the ones that grab it straight away. But the innovation of the application that already exists or the innovation of a product that is already bought is later in a product life cycle than the disruptive innovation with something completely new. So the chasm, the moment of silence where it is as if the market freezes, as if nothing comes from its place, that is called the chasm, and that is an important piece of information I want you to remember. I want you also to remember the difference between the disruptive innovation of something completely new or the application innovation when a new product is more settled so that you can apply it in new ways, or that you actually start to improve and re-innovate that product. And then even if it is further, if this product is really mature, you can still do a process innovation so that the process of maybe the logistics or the process of production is improved by itself. That is a later innovation which you see, so to speak, when the product is in the main street. Then there is some experimental innovation, some marketing innovation, and then when the moment it is already in decline, you have really, the market has seen it from all different sides. You cannot invent any new communication strategy with your market anymore. You start to innovate, so to speak, the business model so that it becomes even cheaper or different or is a freebie, and finally it's a structural innovation, and finally there is an end of life and you can't innovate anymore on the same product. This is an important thing. I want you to have a good look at that and understand how the different types of innovation fits into that product life cycle. But so to say, I will come back to that to a certain extent. Now, that innovation channel, let's look at that. You see a bit again that shape. There are ideas and concepts, and at the end of that innovation channel, we can see that there is value created. Well, it's very simple. The new ideas are followed by project proposals and business cases, and then there is a moment of decision where you say, is that business plan, can I evaluate it? Can I make a decision? And then you start to run your way into the pilots, the prototypes, you launch your market introduction, and you do your market implementation. And then the value is created. Now, at one hand, there is the area of performance management. You have to have a sense how many ideas were documented and brought in, how many business cases were developed. What number of developed business plans did we approve on? Are there rewards and recognition for people to do that? Because only when we have a sense of the numbers, we can start to recognize and reward them appropriately. Now then we have to know the number of pilots, the number of prototypes, the number of new launches, the amount of revenue generated with launches, savings achieved, or number of implemented ideas that were successful, all in the light of the value created. So then we can say, okay, that must be aligned to the development of the process of innovation. Now, We also can look at the side that is on the right side of the support and the enable. So then we say what time is involved, how did we motivate them, how did we get the right people, how did we connect the right know-how and expertise with it. Yeah, then we actually do on the decision-making moment, you have to have the expertise in, you have to have the right money, time and space to allocate the moment you reward and recognize the best business cases and project proposals you want to turn into a plan and put into the value creation process. Yeah? Now, the moment you start then to push that forward, their investment must be made in the implementation, and then you want to use market expertise. You want to bring the sales force up to speed. Distribution channels either must be made or reused or utilized. There must be a measure of control and measuring and leasing, and you have it now. There is the total overview. That's an important picture of the innovation channel as such. Now let's go one step further. There is of course the increasing innovation factor risks or demands and support. Let's have a look there. First of all, there are two axes. You can work in an existing market and an existing product and not much is going on. Then you say, okay, we go with our existing product in a new market, or we go with in our existing market with a new product and see how they respond. You can then take that a bit further. You can say, okay, we have an existing marketing process. The marketing process is a way to reach out to that market, introduce your service. This is a way we have already done it for many years, and we go to a new market with our existing process. But you can also say, well, I can go to an existing market with a new marketing process, or really risking it all, and I go with a new market with a new marketing process. And that's the same with the existing product production process. If I have a new production process with an existing product for a same market, well, there's little risk. I just must be careful that it is the same quality, that people still like what they get, that they recognize it, and then that new product process will not be a problem. But on the moment I have a new production process with a new product into a new market with a new marketing process, I have so many more areas of risk where I don't have the experience in, that you often see that organization risk one or two things at the time. Otherwise they increase too much the possibility of failure. So I want you to understand how this graph works, that there are different levels of taking risk, and that risk taking on one hand is in demand when you say I am innovating, so at least I do new things, but that doesn't mean you have to do everything new. And if you think about it, there will be more dimensions to this graph, but for now these are the four main areas in which you can separate between the levels of risk in being innovative. Finally, not so long ago, I was in the Middle East for a development innovation workshop. It was sort of an accelerated learning workshop where a lot of organizations took place and had a look how to manage innovation, how to accelerate innovation. If you want to innovate, what do you do? And I've put it a bit all together to show that cycle. And I said, well, obviously there is managing the core process of innovation. That is clear. Everybody starts with that. From that moment on, it's important that you manage your knowledge and your information management. That you introduce your social media and your communication sets in there, that your organizational intelligence is included, that technology supports your portfolio of social media tools you want to include in your innovation processes. Then it's important that you look at your staff and your team skills and see if you have to improve there. Often, the moment teams work well and they have a good skill set to cooperate, you can start to introduce, so to speak, brainstorm skills or creativity skill sets, where these tools are helping them to accelerate in their thinking. They suddenly feel the freedom to bring new elements or new disciplines into the process because you supply them with brainstorms methodology that allows error or allows to try things and to call it off. You will see that the moment it is starting to be a part of the organization, to be innovative, you create a culture of innovation. That culture of innovation, if your organization is multicultural, it is often even more difficult, despite of the fact that you say, wow, we really can learn from each other. This is fantastic. It needs serious attention how to bridge between the cultures so that organizations are, or organization parts from the different cultural backgrounds are willing to expose themselves to the risk of failure, or let's say to have the energy and the openness of mind to really be creative. These are difficult things. Now then finally you develop an innovative strategy, an innovative portfolio which can be extended on demand. It's the ROI, the return on investment, the business case for your efforts as a whole is clear and is approved upon. Okay, end of session. Thank you.